Mayor Pugh and Commissioner D'Souza, thanks for coming out. And as you know, this community hospitality brings a lot of economic impact to Baltimore City, and all these folks in the room do great work with our visitors as well as their employees. So we just wanted to have a conversation with you all. I know you're doing great work in the space of violence reduction, and we've been keeping up with the trends, and it's moving in a great direction. We applaud you on the great work, Commissioner, and congratulations.
Thank you.
But we wanted to just have a conversation because all of us are in this together.
Sure.
We are your partners. And so we thought it would be good for you to address the group first with some of your initiatives and some of the great work that's been happening with you and your team, and then I'll turn it over to Madam.
Sure. I just want to start by saying this, that thank you, Madam Mayor, first of all, for believing in me. That's the first thing I'd like to say. And the second thing I'd like to start off by saying is that, I've been with the police department for 30 years, and I am troubled, just like how the great citizens of Baltimore are troubled and concerned about what happened in the GTTF trial. I'm concerned about, our processes and how we police ourselves, but we're addressing it. I brought in some key staff members. I brought in a deputy commissioner who is going to oversee discipline for the entire police department. He is retired from the federal government. He was retired DEA agent. He was actually in charge of all DEA in Philadelphia. And prior to him being in Philadelphia, he was the assistant special agent in Baltimore. He spent the last 26 in the federal system, and he did oversee discipline for the DEA. And the good thing about Gary Tuggle is that he's actually spent 4 years as a Baltimore City police officer, and he's from East Baltimore. The other gentleman that's going through background right now that's actually going to oversee internal affairs is another federal agent, and he starts probably the third week of April. And he was in charge, his last assignment, he was actually in charge of all of inspections for the entire DEA, globally. He starts in a couple of weeks. So I'm putting a lot of pieces in place. I'm having an independent review board, come in and look at the processes at internal affairs for us. And we are 100% capable of, and we will police ourselves in a constitutional manner. We're going to change the dynamics of Baltimore City Police Department. Everybody's upset with what happened. And a lot of folks don't realize that with the GTTF trial, we actually had detectives working with the FBI from day one of the investigation. They was embedded with them, and they was part of the process. We're going to continue that. I stood up an anti-corruption unit. We're really going to police ourselves in a manner that has never been seen before in our police department. Since I came, since the mayor appointed me, there's been 2 lieutenants that's been suspended from the police department. There was an officer that was just indicted just the other day. We have a zero tolerance for corruption in the police department. And I'll just say this, we will and we can police ourselves, and we will. The mayor has tasked me to do that, and I'm going to embrace that like no other. The other thing I'd like to say is that people fail to realize is that the DOJ, we have a consent decree, and the first year plan of the consent decree is to talk about discipline and the processes in discipline. And I'll be the first to share this with you. One of the challenges for years with discipline and how folks report it to internal affairs, it has been fractured, and we're fixing it. So I'll give you a case in point, is something called classification. So when you may call internal affairs and you want to report an incident, it was fractured on how we actually titled it. So you may be calling for what you believe to be an officer that was discourteous, but after you give us a narrative as to what happened, we may realize that it was maybe like a use of force. So we're going to make sure the classification piece is really clear so that everyone could understand. So there's a lot of things that we're fixing, and we really have to be in compliance as to what happened. The last thing with the GTTF is that the FBI actually is sending all of us to Quantico probably in the next couple of weeks. And they're sending us to Quantico because it's what's called an after-action report in terms of what happened in the GTTF. So we understand what happened from A to Z. And based on that, we're building out a specific curriculum to address that so it never happens again. So there's a lot of good positive things that are occurring in the city, that are occurring with the police department that I just really wanted to share with you guys. So with respect to crime, we're definitely trending in the right direction. I'm encouraged in what I'm seeing so far, but there's a long way to go in 2018. There's some challenges that we still are trying to deal with. Last night, for example, we had 7 incidents that we're trying to deal with. And I'll just say this, that the commanders and I, anytime there's incidents across the city, we don't wait till Monday morning, or we don't wait to the next day. We get up on conference calls right away and have a conversation on how we can fix things. So if we see an issue with something, we try and address it almost immediately. There's something called the Violent Reduction Initiative that the mayor started. It's probably the most innovative initiative in the country. And what it does is just like this, 8 o'clock every single morning, Monday to Fridays, we sit in a room at police headquarters, and all the city agencies come together, and we have conversation about public safety. In the room is fire, DPW, transportation, the mayor's office on economic development, code enforcement, social club task force. There's 13 or 14 different agencies in the room. And we talk about primarily 5 areas. One of the areas being the Central District, just a little bit north of the downtown area. And we have a conversation that centers around tactically or operationally, what is it that everybody in the room has to do to reduce crime in those zones? And then we kind of shift to what's really critical that we don't talk about in law enforcement in big cities, is the environmental conditions that exist. And just by a show of hands, who here is familiar with, a book came out in a theory came out around 1982 or so. It's called Broken Windows. So if you're familiar with broken windows, so the concept of broken windows is really phenomenal. It was a really great concept. And that, if you don't know, it's like if you see a broken window literally in a building, the philosophy back then was that it's an unstable community. You see trash as an unstable community. And the mistake that law enforcement made in the 80s and the 90s and even the 2000s was we casted an entire net over a community based on that. So we weren't really specific in terms of what we did. And you know what the repercussions were. You know, it was this consent decree that we're in, zero tolerance. But this is really specific. This violent reduction initiative is very specific when I talk about environmental conditions, is that we're looking at those businesses that are an anchor, a negative anchor in those zones, and we're addressing it very specifically. They know what those locations are, and they know who the problematic players are. So we're not casting a net on East Baltimore or West Baltimore, and we're not having the police officers go in there and lock everybody up. That is not what we're doing. We're going in there, we're providing healthy services for communities, and we're giving them the ability to fix themselves, which is really critical. And then the third part of the VRI is that we have a conversation on how we bring community in. And the community stakeholders, they have a voice, and we listen to them. In the past, prior to this initiative, it would take the district commanders, when they wanted to make a complaint about any trash or any issues in the community, or even residents, they will call 311, and they put these service requests in, and the service requests would probably take 8, 9, 10 days for them to see some type of resolution. Now it takes 1.1, or no more than 2 days. So it's really amazing how it really builds and is building relationships. And the key thing is, I say this all the time. Number one, like this room here, it's valuable that we need to make relationships, number one. And number two is, like, we need to know what each other person does. Like, what is it that we do on a regular basis? What are my challenges? Like, what are your challenges that you see on a regular basis? And it shouldn't be a conversation that we have that you're sending me a text message or you're calling me when something happens. It's getting in front of it and having these healthy conversations to know what each and every one of us do. So I always put somebody on notice, or always embarrass somebody when I say this part. And I'm going to pick the Central District since we're here. So Central District is day work shift. His day work shift, Major Jones's day work shift, started at 7 a.m. and they finish at 5 p.m. Or who wants to volunteer first in advance? I'll pick on you. So from 7 to 5 p.m., how many officers do you think that deployed right now on the streets in the Central District alone?
I'm gonna say somewhere between 25, 30.
Okay. Go over here, sir.
I'm anticipating by the question that it might be, I'll go with 150.
150. Yeah. I would get that a lot in the Northeast, by the way. One last person, I'll go here, sir.
Say about 75.
75 people. Okay, so if I told you on day work shift right now was about 11 to 12, what would you believe? Would you kind of 11 to 12? Don't get alarmed. Don't be alarmed by that, because we have resources available that we support the Central District, and we're very strategic how we support. We're not just arbitrarily sending folks out and saying, go downtown. Like, we're really being strategic, date, time, hour, who we're sending, what the conversations look like, what they're doing, what the officers are physically doing when they're downtown, what they're addressing. So it's very specific, and we have partners outside of BPD that come in and help us as well. You know, we have state partners that come in also, school police that help us on a regular basis. We have academy class that graduated a couple of weeks ago, and every single academy class that graduates has to come out and they have to walk foot. And each class that comes out, we always give Central District the most healthiest portion of the academy class that come out, because we know the importance of downtown and Southeast Harbor area. We know the importance. And we strategically build that out so there's never a gap in between. So if a class graduates and that class doesn't graduate until June or July, we'll hold the class over on foot until the next class graduates, so he gets the resources that he needs. So we have a lot of moving pieces that we put into it. There's something that's called the 10th District. So we have 9 districts in Baltimore City. The 10th District is a mobile district. And in the mobile district, we attach resources, extra resources to them that we have in the police department. And I probably would say the Central District gets the 10th District more than any other district in the city. So we know the importance, and we know how critical and healthy we need to keep downtown is. So, you know, we put a lot into it. There's something else that I'll just close out by saying. There's something called the Strategic Decision Support Center, and it's a concept or an initiative that started in California and LA. It dropped crime. It also went to Chicago and went to the 7th and 11th precincts in Chicago. It dropped crime there. It's coming to our 2 districts here. I think today the Eastern actually has a soft launch, and when I say a soft launch is that all the components are not in it right now, that all the components won't be complete until sometime in June or July. But in this Strategic Decision Support Center is something called predictive policing software, where you actually can predict where crime is going to be, and it actually tells the police officer where to go, and it actually tells the police officer how long to stay in that area. Literally an application on their phone, and it tells them to stay here a certain amount of time. But if there's another call for service that comes in between, they know they have to leave. So it's great. It ties in our license plates readers. It ties in the city TV camera, CCTV cameras. It ties everything in. And although it's in the east side and the west side, the predictive analysis software is coming to actually all the districts. So I'm happy to say that in addition to it coming to all the districts, it's going to be part of the 10th district. So when the 10th district deploys, other than what, or the exception what LA did and Chicago did, we'll be the first city actually to have a mobile SDSC, a mobile Strategic Decision Support Center. So we can very easily put it downtown. This past week was a challenge. We were scared. We were nervous about the amount of people, St. Patrick's Day. We spent time down here. There's zero incidents, zero incidents downtown, because we knew there was a need to support Kevin, support the mayor of the Central District, and we won't stop. We'll continue to support the downtown businesses, how healthy we need it to be. And the last thing I'll say is I forgot to tell you that if you look out the window and behind the federal building, right behind that federal building, on the other side, there's a resident in this room that lives there, and that would be me. So I live right downtown. I live right downtown, so I know how important it is, and I know what the challenges are inside and outside the uniform. So thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. I don't know if any of your other commanders want to say anything, or we're good? We good?
Yes, you're okay.
So, good morning, afternoon. Many of you I've seen between Visit Baltimore and Downtown Partnership and the other meetings. So, I think we know the strong relationship that we have and the transparency and communication we have. At a moment's notice, you're reaching out to me and I'm reaching out to you in reference to whatever's going on. As the commissioner and the mayor mentioned, we have seen a dramatic reduction in crime in the downtown area, continuing over from 2017 until the current, and we still see those trends. This is going into my second year as the commander here, and this district will stretch you. It is a great district. It is a great place to live, work, and play. I just recently was at the Marriott in the Harbor for the Penn Show. I'm a Penn enthusiast, so I was there.
Didn't know that.
Yes, I'm a big Penn guy. So.
Glad we know that.
See, there you go. So I kind of threw that out there for the but I just said that even when I'm off the air, I took my son and we went down there just to enjoy it. But the big thing going forward is realizing, as the police commissioner mentioned, is you have to change. My maturation here as the major of this district, when I first started here, it was really just the crime fight and the businesses. But then I didn't realize that, fast forward 2 years, having to, as a district commander, being a subscriber to the business journal. That's something that I do, and I have to read because I need to know about, the IHOP opening up in Pratt Street in 2018, and the businesses are coming and going. That's something that, as a district commander, you have to be aware of and forward thinking as far as my deployment and crime agenda. So just know that when we do deploy, we're looking holistically, as the mayor and the PC said, is that when we look at this crime fight, it's predictive policing, that the resources that we do have, they're being placed at strategic areas because that's maybe where the density maps are showing where they should be at that time, and we're succeeding. So, we have the most robust of the camera systems in the city, with 88 in the downtown area. So the partnership that we have not only with you, with your security forces, but also with our City Watch, our sister agencies, and MTA School Police, will continue to flourish and go forward in 2010.
So, thanks, Major Jones. I know Madam Mayor has a time constraint, so I'm going to defer to the mayor at this point.
Let me just say first, thank you all for being here, and you're very important to the city of Baltimore, and we know that you welcome people, thousands and thousands of people every day, and you are the backbone of the economy of our downtown community. As we continue to bring in conventions and so forth, we want to make sure that our city is safe. And so what I want you to know is that we are squarely focused on how we reduce violence and homelessness around some of the hotels who've experienced that for some years. And as you can see, we've got a serious problem, and it's not just a problem of Baltimore City, it's a problem around our nation. And part of that problem is how we address homelessness. And I've said this time and time again in this discussion that we're having at the national level, that shelters, as you well know, don't really work in the sense that they require people to come in at a certain time and leave by a certain time. And I've had this discussion not just here in Baltimore, but throughout the nation, that we really have to create homes for the homeless and then provide the wraparound services that are needed. And what we found, for example, on Guilford Avenue, when we had over 40 people camped on Guilford Avenue, we didn't just move them. We went into those camps, we had conversations, we talked to people, only to find out that many of the people, some were not even from Baltimore. We were able to get plane tickets and send some people back home. And then there were those who were working, but because shelters have a certain hour that you got to go in and leave, they couldn't go into the shelter because there were time restraints. And so they needed a place where they could go and be able to get up in the morning and go elsewhere. And so we were able to find such a location out on Eastern Avenue, which is, we went in, we did the surveys, we analyzed the needs of the people, and we set up a deadline by which time we would move them. We even took some folks out early to go see the facility in which they would be located. And they were able to entice other people to move. And so it is very important for us as city leaders to make sure, especially around our hotels and so forth, that we're creating an environment that people can feel safe to walk to and from. That's an ongoing conversation, believe me, with health care for the homeless. That it's just not acceptable what takes place in some of these areas, especially around our hotels, because our hotels are impressionable for our visitors, and they invite people in, and then other people will invite other people to come. And that's the kind of atmosphere we want to create. And so you should know that we had 65 people camping in front of City Hall. And so when I asked some of my top folk, what should I do? They said, don't worry about it, they'll go away. And I said, well, think about it as if you were laying there. What would you want? And so what I did was I went outside and I invited a few people in to come and have a conversation with me. And in those conversations, what I heard from folks were the same things that I just told you. One, we can't go into shelters because some of us need to work. Two, we don't feel safe. And we need a place where we can sort of kind of feel like we can come and go. And so I said, look, here's what I'll tell you. You can't sleep in front of City Hall. First of all, it's not a place for you to sleep. And so let us work something out. So I want you to know that most people don't know that after surveying and analyzing the folks that were there, we pulled up buses and moved all of them to Pender Hughes, an abandoned school that had been evacuated. And we allowed them to self-govern. And you would be surprised, the outcome. If you rode by that place, you would not have known anybody was there. They didn't hang outside. They didn't walk through the neighborhood. The place was spick and span. They kept it clean. There was a transgender woman, Samantha, who sort of kind of became the self-appointed leader. And I came in one day because I would go by every day. So we've done the evaluations. They did their own evaluations. And this is what she said. She said, Madam Mayor, there are some people in here who will never get up. They just want a place to lay their head. But there are people who need to go to work. And then there are people who are here with children. So we immediately we were able to provide Section 8 vouchers for the folks who had children, and then send some of the folks to some of the places where they could take care of their children. The women ended up, most of them, in a dormitory-style facility, and many of the men, some went to Helping Up Mission, and then some of them ended up at this other place because, again, they had a need to work. But there we were able to also provide the wraparound services for them. Some folks suffered from mental illness, as you may well know, and some from drug addiction issues. And so we had to deal with all of that. And if society is ever going to come to grips with homelessness, it has to be from a holistic perspective. That the first thing you need to provide is housing. Housing and then services that can support the housing. In the facility where we have the 40 folks who were on Guilford Avenue, we provide transportation, 3 meals a day, no matter what time you come in or out, you have your 3 meals a day, dormitory style living, mental health services, drug addiction treatment, the whole 9 yards. And that is the way that society has to move. But my concern is that we make sure that downtown is safe, it's clean, and that we make it accessible for the visitors as well as for those who come to work in your hotels every single day. And as the commissioner said, I spent my first 60 days as mayor putting together a consent decree. And the reason I put this together, the consent decree, was because of the 10-year look back at the Baltimore Police Department said that there needed to be some transformation and there needed to be oversight. And so while people said, well, you got a new administration, don't worry about it, nobody's going to sign it, not only did we spend those first 60 days getting it done, we also got it signed. And so there's a monitoring team currently that is in place that is monitoring the Baltimore City Police Department and directing how the reform should take place. The other thing that I learned in this whole process is that unlike other jurisdictions, in 1997 they started putting computers in police cars. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I wasn't mayor then. And I became mayor and sworn in December 2016. But unlike Prince George's County, unlike Montgomery County, where they started putting computers in police cars in 1997, it didn't happen here. So the first thing I did was go to the governor to get $2 million to put computers in our police cars. And we should have them pretty much outfitted by the end of April, and we look forward to that. The technology in the police department is just ridiculous in terms of that lack of investment. No license plate readers. We didn't have license plate readers. We didn't have gunshot detection. We didn't have the tools that police departments around this nation who are tackling this problem every day have. And while I say we should have a police force of 3,000, it still is one of the largest police forces in the country. But when you look inside of those numbers, and this is what most people don't know, when I got here in 2015, 2016, we froze police positions right after Freddie Gray, during a time when police officers were leaving our police department at 20 to 25 police officers a month. So by the time I get here, we're 700 police officers down, 700 to 800 police officers down. It just made no sense. I don't know what that computation was or why we thought. And then we now struggle every week with overtime. And this will be the first year. This will be the first year that we pass the attrition rate, where we hire more police officers than leave the police department. And just to maintain that meant that we had to have 5 classes with close to 42 police officers every year. 5 classes of 42 every year, just to keep up with the attrition rate. And so we've slowed down the attrition rate. We've sped up the application process, but not the training. It would take 9 months for someone to go through training to become a police, 9 months to get to the academy. And then you have a mandated 10.5 months training that is mandated by the state. And so while we don't mess with the training, that 9 months I went and looked at and said, well, what are they doing around the country? What is the average around the state? The average around the state was 4 to 6 months. So immediately using and you all should know we're Bloomberg City, using my Bloomberg team, we immediately began to look at that process. And so we now have that process down to about 4 months, with technology and some of the things that we're putting in place. The thing that I think is really important is that we make sure that in those first 3 years of policing in our city, I always say that the patrol are the backbone of any police department, and we don't need them leaving in less than 3 years. So one of the things that I'm looking at in this upcoming year, and I put it in the budget, is to incentivize patrol, like there's Patrol 1, Patrol 2, Patrol 3, so that we incentivize them, because they start at about 49,000, which is almost competitive, not quite as competitive as our surrounding jurisdictions, and we don't want to lose our police officers. So we will incentivize them their first year, the second year, third year, so that they're beyond competitiveness with our surrounding jurisdiction. And finally, let me just say this. We are trending in the right direction, but leadership does matter. Who is leading a department does matter. And I'm very confident in the choice that I've made of police commissioner in Darryl D'Souza. I created the Violence Reduction Initiative because one of the things I'm always trying to do is think out of the box. What are we not doing? How can we do something differently? And this initiative, which puts police officers, commanders, and so forth in the room with each other, I believe, as Darryl does, that it is making a difference. But to see the interactions of then Deputy Commissioner Darryl D'Souza, who didn't just sit back, but sat in and worked and led his command staff, said to me that this was the right person to lead the police department. So we've got a lot of work in front of us, but I can tell you that I'm proud of the work that's being done by Visit Baltimore, our convention center. We want your hotels to stay filled, and so we're doing everything we can to change, and I don't care what anybody says, to change the narrative about Baltimore. And I am furious today, by the way, as it relates to the editorial about self-policing, and to take stuff out of context, or to think it's okay to put a gun to my head in an editorial piece is ridiculous. And it is not what we should be doing in terms of how we move our city forward. I want to be real clear. We have an independent body monitoring the police department. The police commissioner has said he would set up an independent body to focus on the gun trace task force. We're talking to outsiders to do that and creating additional funding. I know this is a political year, but I don't have time to play politics. For me, it's about my city and how I move it forward and how we raise this city up together. I am committed to you to assure that your businesses continue to grow in our city and to support them as you continue to grow business in our city. So thank you for the opportunity to be here with you.
So Madam Mayor, before you leave, and let me just say to you, we thank you for your leadership. Commissioner D'Souza, thank you. And we're all in this together. We're here as a community to help and support you because we want this to be a great city for everyone and for not only the visitor, but for the residents. And a lot of folks who work at these hotels live here in Baltimore City. So workforce development is extremely important. So you all
Oh,
keep...
yes, let me just say, thank you all for the young people that you hire during the summer. This year is just overwhelming. Last year, we had 12,000 young people apply to work during the summer youth program, you know, where you all pay the $1,600 per student. This year, 16,500 young people.
Wow.
I would rather see our young people working than on the streets of our corner. And we're working with these squeegee kids. I want to get them off the corner. I want to get them doing something more productive. So work with me as, you know, we continue to work with you. That's a lot of young people. And if you want to see them, I think they're still now, they're going through an interview process. This will be the first year on May the 9th, and I hope you all give this some consideration as well, that we will hold a jobs fair for high school students, because everybody's not going to college. Now, we've made Baltimore City Community College free, but everybody's not going to college. Everybody doesn't have to go to college. Some children want to work. Some people need to work. So please give consideration to our jobs fair on May the 9th that will be at the War Memorial Plaza. Hire these young people. Let's put them to work. You know, let's keep them off these corners. Let's make them more productive, because I can tell you, there's not a child that I've not touched that if you put your arms around them and help them go in the right direction, and you catch them before the drug dealer does, that they won't do it. Thank you.
You have time for maybe one
Yeah,
question?
sure.
Any questions from our hoteliers for either Mayor Pugh or
Yes,
the
sir.
Commissioner?
Yes, any future plans for the block?
No.
I just wanted to see if the city, they have any direction, it will be as.
So, you know, the block hasn't come up in a while. I know that there is some renovations going on, especially on the corner right by, is that Guilford? Not Guilford. Yeah, Guilford, where we're doing some renovation. MeQ has moved around and wrapped around that particular area. Your hotel
Yes.
is in that area. We're going to keep our area clean, so there is some work going on right directly, diagonally up the street from you. So no real plans. We're focused right now on the convention center, and we've done quite a bit of investment in downtown, and we'll continue to do that. But I tell folks that there's got to be neighborhood investment as well. Many of you who live in the city know that there's some surrounding communities that we've got to do better by. And because I just believe that if we're not fixing those neighborhoods and communities, the devastation that is happening there will spill out in our downtown communities. And so there's a real effort between the waterfront partnership, the downtown partnership, our police department, to really make sure that this is a holistic place for people to come to. And the economic development efforts with the Baltimore Development Corporation. Well, I'll ask them.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you.
Madam Mayor Pugh, thank you.
Thank you
Thank you very much.